89% of business leaders say AI is a top priority. The right choice is crucial, which is why teams at 1/3 of Fortune 500 companies use Grammarly. Grammarly is the right AI assistant for your team. With top-tier security credentials and 15 years of experience in responsible AI, Grammarly is how companies like yours increase productivity while keeping data protected and private. See why 70,000 teams trust Grammarly at grammarly.com/enterprise.
Life can be chaotic. If you're running a retail business, don't let disorganized order fulfillment add to the chaos. Use ShipStation instead. With ShipStation, you never have to worry about shipping and fulfillment again. Whether you're running a business out of your garage or you have multiple warehouses, ShipStation is ideal for every phase of your business's growth. Save time with one login for all your stores and by automating repetitive tasks. Plus, you'll save money with the best shipping rates from global carriers. ShipStation's industry-leading features help you deliver a better customer experience. They'll get accurate and faster shipments along with automated tracking updates with your branding. And with up to 88% off UPS and USPS rates and up to 90% off FedEx rates, ShipStation is the fastest and most affordable way to ship. Calm the chaos. Switch to ShipStation today. Start a free trial at shipstation.com/audio. That's shipstation.com/audio.
Welcome to the Dynasty Dugout Show, a podcast covering all things minor league baseball. Get a front row seat to the action with everything you need to know about the future stars of Major League Baseball. And now, here's your host, Chris Clegg.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dynasty Dugout Show. It is Friday, February the 16th. We're going to talk Mets prospects. A lot of good players to cover in this system. Thank you for joining us. If you're joining live, I appreciate you. Looking forward to breakdown. We've got some good video today. Covered a lot of these prospects live, which is a lot of fun. I've seen the majority of these guys, and so got a lot to talk about today. We've also had a lot of crazy injury news coming out of spring training. Kind of no surprise. This always happens at the beginning of pitchers and catchers reporting. There's things that have not been reported on all off season. And then it's like, okay, here we go. All these players are injured. Sadly, a lot of news out of Orioles camp with injuries, and hopefully those guys bounce back pretty quickly. We'll keep you up to date on all of that. I have linked the article to the Mets top prospects here in the chat. If you're hanging out with us, you can click that there, follow along. If you are visiting with us and it's your first time in the room, thank you for joining us. If you could make a free account here on Playback, and from there you can chat with us, you can ask questions, all those good things that you want to do. So thank you again for being with us. We'll get to the breakdowns here in just a second. I've been fortunate to see a lot of these guys, whether it be some of the guys were actually in the Astro system, saw those before the trade happened, and also seen a lot of the Mets guys, whether it be when they were in Brooklyn and down here in Greenville or in the AFL. So I've got good film on the majority of this top group, and there's a lot of fun names to talk about. So let's break it down. Number one in the system is Drew Gilbert. Drew Gilbert, you could go a lot of ways here, I think. You go several ways at the top, but ultimately, I've got Drew Gilbert at the top of the system. You could go, I think, Ronnie Mauricio still, who's debuted. You could go Jet Williams still, or Drew Gilbert. All these guys, same tier for me. So you can argue any way that you want, but I have Drew Gilbert at the top. I'm going to pop some film up on him because I've got some good looks at him as well. Got to find what I've got. No, I've got this video on Twitter that I'll pop up real quick for you. And I also think have a good open face view too. My problem is I have so much video And I haven't put it all on YouTube. That's the plan, to kind of get it all on YouTube in one spot. So the Dynasty Dugout YouTube will be a place where you can find good footage. And I hope that will be good use all year for you guys. And we've got some G-Rex says, I'm still salty we gave up Gilbert and Clifford for Verlander. Yeah, if the Stros win it all, it will be worth it. Well, he's smaller than you might expect. And this is a video of him actually striking out, which is funny too. But you can see kind of the stature. He's got a little bit of an open stance. With 2 strikes especially. But he doesn't do a lot. He doesn't have a lot of movement. Hammer in the swing. So that's an encouraging thing when you look at Gilbert. He does have a good bat. You kind of see it there. When I do find the open face video, it's my fault for not being more prepared in a busy couple of days. So looking at Drew Gilbert, I think we see an outfielder that's going to be ready really later. The Mets have already said that he's going to begin the year in AAA, which is an encouraging boost for him. Like, they're confident in him to put him in AAA. So I'm pretty confident in him as well that Gilbert can be someone that is in the majors this year. Profile, like, see and move. He is smaller, but I do think he plays well above his listed 5. He's got a sturdy build. Finished this year with a 9% power, which is normally going to be average. It's pretty encouraging there. When this, that Gilbert, we are looking for that base skills, contact skills, and 76% year, which is encouraging. He finished the year last year between 5 and AA, which is rather impressive. Plate appearances, kind of another that way you can not watch him swing and miss anymore. Let's pop up this video of Gilbert. Cleared it out. Well, so I know I've got an open face video somewhere, but readily available. But yeah, Gilbert's profile to me, like when we think about what he can be. Oh, sorry about that. The audio of the video is going over. Subscribe the video for the stream. So if you can, I think you can control it. If you go to the bottom, like I'm not hearing it because if you go, like if you go to the bottom, it says volume. I've got my stream all the way down. What I'll do is I'll mute the video next video I put up. So hopefully that doesn't come through for you if I'm muting that stream. So I mean, I don't want me talking at all, but I think you can control out the bottom on the volume thing. You can stay volume up, stream volume down, but I will be sure to mute that next video. So you don't have to do it. But yeah, Drew Gilbert, looking at a peak outcome, I think he could be like a 360, 370 type guy. Very high floor with the OBP. I think there's 20 to 25 home run profile. Even though he's smaller, he kind of gets to the most of that power. So he's one that I do think the power plays up above what you see in the frame. And if you do look at the whole profile, like 20, 25 home runs, I think he could steal you 10 bases. He is a good hustler. I think there's a very safe here. And that's obviously something that I look for. It's like, okay, like this guy is really safe, and he's one that I want to bet on is Drew Gilbert's profile. There's a reason the Mets went out and traded for him, because they believe in him too. So Jet Williams is the next guy in the system. Jet Williams is a very, very encouraging prospect. He's one that plays up well above his height. He's small. I mean, when I walk on the field pregame and I see someone that's smaller than me, and I'm pretty short, like I'm 5'9" on a good day. So when they are shorter than me, like it obviously raises a question. Jet does play up pretty well. Here you can see the swing here. It's pretty simple. He's got a good sized leg kick, but he does really get into his body. and can turn on pitches. So here's one from later in the year in Brooklyn when they were down here in town. And if you can comment, let me know. Like if you still hear, I muted the video that was coming through, so hopefully you don't hear it as well. But if you can let me know, that'd be great. Much better. Thank you. All right, perfect. So Jet Williams, what we're looking at here in this swing, I mean, I think that he's a high contact hitter. He's going to play up above his height. And that's one of the reasons I'm more conservative on him, I'll be honest, is because he's smaller. 5'6" profiles are a dime a dozen that make the majors. We can look to Jose Altuve, but ultimately, those are rare. Those are rare profiles that make it. So with Jet, I do think he has all the skills to make it. I do want to see what he looks like in AA and AAA this year. I mean, he had one of the lowest chase rates in the minors. 12% is absolutely insane. So he doesn't chase a bit. Like doesn't expand the zone, but also I will say that his zone is really small. And I saw a lot of non-competitive pitches. I saw him for 4 games in this series, and he didn't get a lot of competitive pitches in high A. So the high walk rate, the chase rate, they're really good, but I'd be careful with that just because the standpoint of, his zone is tiny and he's going to get a lot of pitches out of the zone just because of how small it is. I will say that I think the power is pretty underrated for his size. He ran a 102.5 mile an hour, 9th percentile. He hits a lot of fly balls. Watch this swing. It is kind of geared for fly balls. Like he's getting lift pretty easily out of that swing. And he's pretty explosive, especially in the lower half. The upper half does do a lot of damage as well. And he can really turn on balls. And that's where he gets to most of his power, is when he's turning on it. He does make good contact, 79% across all 3 levels. It's really good. There is elite speed, obviously. Stole 45 bases on 52 attempts. I clocked him as a 70 runner. So that's encouraging. That's going to be a huge aspect for him as a prospect and for a fantasy prospect too, because I think he's got such a high floor to hit. He does have high OBP skills. The power is the question. Like, what kind of power does he get to? I'd project 15 home runs. That would be a safe mark, but 18 would not surprise me either. So it's all about, how much bat speed does he get? How much power can he get to? And you look, there's some bat speed here. You've watched this clip over and over and over. So I'll stop it just because you've seen it so much. But I do think that he can get to plenty of power. I think that obviously there is plenty in the tank with Williams to get to this 15 to 18 home run mark and be a really stout prospect. And so love Jet Williams, love what he brings to the table. Ronnie Mauricio, the next guy we're going to discuss. Unfortunately, he's out all year this year with an injury. He tore that ACL, if I'm not mistaken. So he's done for the year, which really sucks because he had a great year in AAA last year. You look at the profile, and there's a ton of power. He hits the ball really hard. He can run. I think he could be a consistent 25 home run, 20 stolen base guy. And hopefully that knee injury does not bother him when he returns, because I just really believe that Mauricio has the juice to be a fantasy stud. So there's 30 home runs in there. In some seasons, I believe he can steal bases. The biggest question is, like, he doesn't get on base at a high clip, doesn't walk at a high clip because he's so hyper aggressive in the swing, where he swung at over 50% of pitches last year. He ran a 40% chase rate for each of the last 2 seasons, which is, obviously those aren't encouraging, but he does kind of make up for it with the fact that he does make a lot of end zone contact. And that's really huge. The fact that he's running an 85, 86% end zone clip. And that kind of balances out everything a little bit when we're looking at the big chase rates, because when he's getting a pitch in the zone, he's doing damage. And that certainly is huge. Do you have some video somewhere? I saw him 2 years ago when Brooklyn came through, but I'm actually going to pop up a video of him having the hardest hit ball by any Met last year when he kept at 117 miles an hour, which he absolutely roped. He obliterated this ball, and
backing up, and it's over the
sound. I mean, he absolutely smoked this ball. Mauricio has all the juice in the world. I think there's a lot of potential here. You look at that frame, it's easy to see why he could be and that's that Teoscar Hernandez not chasing after it at all, getting a bad read on it. Probably could have called it, honestly, but 117.3 off that bat is very, very impressive. You look at the swing, you look at the stance, you look at the frame. I think there's a lot to dream on here with Ronnie Mauricio, but unfortunately, we'll see none of him this year, and that's kind of a sad thing that he's going to be out for the year, so we won't see him until 2025, but I do think that this will create a good buying opportunity on him, especially from the standpoint of no one's really going to be talking about him. And then there you go. Like there's this buying opportunity that you have because he's going to be sitting out a full year. So from that standpoint, I do think that you have a great buying opportunity on Ronnie Mauricio himself. And let's look at this next guy who has got some weird buzz this offseason, and it's not been good buzz. And that's Luis Angel Acuna, who I really like and I think is pretty underrated. He smokes baseballs, actually. Like he plays a really, really good shortstop. He may move off the position just because they've got Lindor there. I don't know exactly what they do with Lindor. We shall see there. But ultimately, I think that Luis Angel Acuna is a great buy. He's become someone you can get rather cheap in a dynasty league because the talk around him's been really weird where it's like, okay, they're like, he's not as good as like people think. I watched him in BP in the Arizona Fall League last year. He absolutely can obliterate some balls. And this was just a slap single out to right, but he hits the ball where it's pitched, which I really like. And he's not going to try to pull the ball when it's on the outer half. You see that there with him. He is one that I think is being vastly underrated right now. It was all the expectations. He's Ronald's brother. He's smaller, but he swings just like Ronald. The stance, the swing, everything looks just like Ronnie's. He's not going to get to the kind of power that Ronnie does, but he does make really good contact. He's got high-end speed. Last year, he stole 57 bases on 67 attempts. Him and his brother were actually having a competition of who could steal the most, which is a lot of fun. But obviously, Ronald won out there. Still, Luis Angel Acuna is a really, really good prospect. I thought we saw him take some really good steps forward in 2023. His contact rates jumped up. 76% clip is well above minor league average, and it's right at MLB average for overall contact. He hit 9 home runs. I'll tell you, I think the power could get to where he hits 15 home runs a year. If you're stealing a lot of bases, he's going to get on base. I mean, he shows good plate discipline skills. He makes a lot of contact. Ronald Acuna Jr., not Ronald Acuna, Luis Angel Acuna Jr. obviously should invest in Ronald Acuna Jr., but Luis Angel Acuna, he still has all the skills that you want to see. I know Beck's hopped in the room. Beck saw him in the AFL 2 years ago. I thought that he was a 60 at short. He played a really good shortstop, so he could play a really good second base as well. If they need him to, he is going to get to some power. He is going to steal bases, and I think that's really the biggest thing with him. The stolen bases are going to be huge, and I think that he could hit for a good average. So Luis Angel Acuna, easy investment because especially analysts on Twitter have been kind of dogging on him all offseason, and I can't poke a lot of holes in this profile. Everything I've seen from when I saw him with Hickory to when I saw him in the AFL to what I've seen on video this past year, I think there's a lot to like here in Luis Angel Acuna. And yeah, I think that Beck mentions that he's a much better shortstop than Jet, and that's absolutely true. Jet can play second, he can play center. Acuna can play center too, which they've got a lot of options here. They have a lot of depth in this system. So it's kind of like, who is going to play where? I guess we'll find out. I'm not totally sure here with how they shake up this offense because they're stacked, and the Mets can go out and buy guys too, which is it's going to be interesting. If ultimately where does Luis Angel Acuna play? But that'll be determined. I'm not worried about that. It's a really good bat. Let's look at Ryan Clifford, who I got a mixed bag of results with him. I'll be honest. When I saw him multiple times this year, I saw him in the Astros org. I'm not sure why I didn't cut that. Why did I put that on YouTube with him with the thing down? That's weird. But anyway, let's get back to the swing. I'm about to edit this YouTube video. This is horrific, by the way. I didn't realize this was so bad. This is Ryan Clifford. He's a big body. He has an interesting two-strike approach where he doesn't really lift his toe at all. This video is bad. I'm sorry, guys. I'll get another one because I do have more video clips of him. I absolutely hate this. Clifford, anyway, he's limited to a corner infield spot. I don't think he's going to play outfield personally. I've seen him in outfield. I've seen him at first base. I think he's pretty limited to playing first base. So there's a lot of pressure on this bat to perform. And I got a mixed bag of results from him when I saw him. I saw him probably 6 or 7 games this year, and they weren't always. Here's some open face swings. Kind of see. I do like the approach. He really tones it down a lot with 2 strikes. He's got really explosive bat speed. He can get to power. He doesn't put much effort in the swing, in my opinion. But here was some just close-up open face of Clifford, who I think is still a good investment, but I think some have pushed him up pretty high. If you look at the strikeout rate, 27.5%, you may not think there was good contact rates, but overall, the contact rates were rather good with Clifford, 75% on the year. I think that's at least average contact. He did show some big exit velocities as well, 106 90th, which is huge. But I'm not going to form a solid opinion on him from the bad looks that I had, because I know there's more in the profile than what I saw with Clifford. And so I think that he's still somebody that I want to invest in. It just depends on the cost with him ultimately, because I think some have boosted him up so much. And yeah, I think he's a top 100 guy, but maybe a back end. I may have him just outside at this point. I can't remember exactly where I have him, but Clifford is somebody to watch pretty closely this year. I think that will be really big 2024 for him of who we see. So I've got a couple comments on Clifford. Weirdly enough, there were some takes from Stroh's people on Twitter who thought Clifford could be better than Gilbert long-term. We did see that when the trade happened. Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I'm just a little more comfortable with Gilbert than I am Clifford. But I do think that Clifford still has a lot to like. Heard there's some visibility issues with lefties at Brooklyn. It's kind of giving him a mulligan. Yeah, that is an interesting take too. And we'll be curious to see. He should be in Double-A if I had to guess. We should see him in Double-A next year. This next guy is actually the first one that I have not seen live, and that's really unfortunate because I don't get a lot of looks at the upper levels of the New York Mets minors. Don't come this way, but my buddy Eric Cross did see him and said we could use some of his footage for Christian Scott, who has absolutely been a helium guy. He is one of the highest floor arms in the minors, in my opinion, because he brings a lot to the table with who he is as a pitcher, because he throws so many strikes, and that's really huge with Christian Scott. Sorry, I was finding that Eric's video. He had a full montage on here. This was just one pitch, if I'm not mistaken. This is actually not Eric's footage, but aside the point, Christian Scott does a lot of things well. When you look at Scott and who he is as an arm, he just has such a high floor. He throws strikes. He had one of the lowest walk rates in the minors, 3.6%. He could certainly fly up boards, and I'm surprised he's not higher. And even for myself, like, I still want to see a little more, but when you look at the fastball, there is a lot to like with this pitch. He's sitting in mid-90s. He's topping out in 98, which is huge. The slider is a plus pitch, sitting in the mid-80s. It has some good deceptiveness to it. He misses a ton of bats. He gets chased out of the zone. I do think the changeup will be the biggest question mark of, like, what does the development look like here with the changeup? Because he's already got the really good fastball slider combo. He's got the chance to be a really high floor starting pitcher. And if that changeup develops, he could really take off. And I think that's a real possibility. Yeah, I mean, even though Beck says lefties could be a problem with the fastball slider only. Yeah, that certainly could be an issue. He can run that changeup away from lefties. It will be huge development. I am absolutely in on Christian Scott. And I think Scott could make the majors this year. Look at this Mets rotation. It's really shaky. I know they've gone out and signed some guys, but can they stay healthy? That's still to be determined, in my opinion. And I'm not sure they can. I think Scott can get some starts in the majors this year. I think Scott could just really vault up even further because there's strikeout stuff. There's a really good arsenal. He had a 32% CSW last year, which anything above 30% is really good. And he threw strikes at a 68.5% clip, which anything above like 60, like 62, 63 is like average strike rate. 68.5. That's so good. This guy was a reliever at Florida, and the Mets decided to develop him as a starter. And holy cow, like that's really awesome. So I'm way in on Christian Scott, and I think you should be too. I should probably have him in the top 100 at this point. I don't, but I'm getting there for sure. So the next guy in the system is Colin Houck, who they drafted this year. If you want a very athletic type, if you haven't drafted FYPD, I think Houck is a great bit at later in the, you think like 20s range. He is a very good athlete with a very good bat. He shows, above average or better tools across the board. And, I think that when you look at this player, I'm going to pop up this video of him I have in the article. This video is from PBR. I have not seen Houck live. That was a really short swing, but there's the swing. You see it. Very explosive bat speed. Not a lot. So you see not a lot of movement, short stride, just whips the bat through the zone. It looks like that video is playing like in 1.25 time rather than just one. But he's, in my opinion, just such a good athlete because you can kind of read the report here. Dude was a 3-star quarterback. He had 12 Power 5 offers. It's insane. And he's never really focused fully on baseball until now. And I think that just doing that, he's going to take off. He's going to expand the power. Like he's has a lot of double strength, but that's going to turn into home run strength. That hand and bat speed are absolutely electric. The athleticism off the charts, as you might think from a multi-sport athlete. And he has 6.6 mile second 60, which is firmly plus or better. So I think the contact skills, like what do those play like? We always have questions about these guys who play multiple sports and haven't shown the best contact skills against the best pitching. But I like to bet on these really good athletes, and Houck is one of them. That bat speed is just so, so good. I'll take a chance on Houck later in FYPD because I think you can do really, really well getting him, and his value should only increase. I'm pretty intrigued. So the next guy is Blade Tidwell. I had Kevin Parada in this spot, but Kevin Parada is just not it. I've seen him a good bit, and then we saw him in the AFL, and I don't know what to do with Kevin Parada. Honestly, we'll talk about a bit about him in a minute, but Blade Tidwell is a ton of fun. He was a really solid arm at Tennessee, and then he really exploded as well when he came to the Mets system. And let me use my buddy Jeff Ponce's video here. He mentioned you could use it in article form. So he's always said, anytime you want to use my video, so always credit Jeff. Jeff does great work, always at the ballpark. And Jeff, obviously, or here's Tidwell. You can see a lot of what he has to offer here. But Tidwell, ultimately, he took a huge step forward this year and had a 3.57 ERA across 116 innings. He had 153 strikeouts. Most of this damage was done in high A, but he did struggle a little bit in double A, but not as much. There were a couple of starts that kind of really just blew up the numbers, but really weren't as bad because there was 2 bad starts with 5 and 6 earned runs each. He sits 96. He tops out at 99 on any given day. That slider is devastating. If you're watching along with us, you can see just him really get these hitters with the slider. That was an ugly swing on a pitch that really shouldn't have been swung at, but so much sweeping action on that pitch. He locates the fastball well enough And that's the biggest question is the strike throwing rate. Like how many strikes can he throw? The arsenal is really, really good, though. He mixes in a low 80s changeup, a mid 70s curveball, but the fastball slider are the go-to pitches here for Tidwell. I think the biggest improvement that I'll be watching for this year is how many strikes does he throw? And posted a 13% walk rate last year, 61.6% strike clip. So he teeters on average, like close to average strike throwing, but you do want to see that tick up. If he gets to 63% mark and gets the strike rate or the walk rate below 10% or right around 10%, then I really think this arsenal can play because he does have the traits of a solid starting pitcher. He's got a 6'4" workhorse frame. He does everything that you want to see from a starter. And I think it can work. I really do believe that if all clicks right for Blade Tidwell, then he's going to be a really good starting pitcher, and he maybe even has that mid-rotation upside. And I'm curious to see how the strike throwing really develops this year. So if you have any questions on you guys that we've discussed so far, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll be glad to answer those. Beck does say, feels like a fifth starter type right now, who flashes fantasy third, but frustrating blowups. Yeah, and that was the big thing this year. I mean, he just had several blowups that, hurt him. And that was really the thing. Like the numbers could have been like spectacular if it wasn't for those few blowups. So he's one to watch this year. How much strike throwing can he get to? What does the command look like? This next guy is another question, like all of the tools in the world that you could want to bet on with Alex Ramirez. It's just, why has he not gotten results? And I don't quite understand that there hasn't been the full results that you want to see out of Alex Ramirez, because when I saw him, when Brooklyn was down here in August, the dude was doing some stellar things. I'm pretty certain, if I'm not mistaken, he had 11 hard hit balls in 4 games that I was at. Like, that's absurd, actually, when you think about it. It feels like if Mike B said we've been waiting on him to come around forever, and we have. And that was the thing. Like, when I saw him, I'm like, I don't understand why he's not getting to more. It's an interesting swing. You look, there's a lot of hand movement, that pump. He drops the hands 6-8 inches there. I'll go back and look at that again. It is a lot of hand movement. There's a lot going on. He's got a big leg kick. He's got a great frame to dream on, and I'm surprised that he actually hasn't filled out yet. And I'm not really sure why, but the dude smoked hard hit balls. Like this one, he just smoked it, Roman Anthony, and Anthony got a good jump, almost to the track, deepest part of the park. Smoked one there. Pretty sure that one got down, if I'm not mistaken. There were just so many good hit balls. He just like stung them right at people. And I was like, this is such a weird profile for me that he hasn't like really broken out yet. And the numbers were really disappointing. He hit 7 home runs in 2023. He slashed 221, 310, 317. And I'm like, this guy's exit velocities are good. Why is he not getting to more power? And I did reference the numbers back, 11 hard hit balls during that 6-game series in Greenville. He seemed to find a person he would smoke it. It's like right to Roman Anthony every time. It was so bizarre. He didn't really get the results that you would have thought from watching him swing the bat. I thought he entered the season with major hit tool concerns, but he made contact 75% of the time. Like, that's above average. So why is he not getting to better numbers? And I think that there's still a gap here. There's that major hitch in the swing. Beck mentioned that. He ran a 277 BABIP, which is well below average. He had a 5.6% home run to fly ball rate, which stands out a lot of bad luck. Can that improve? Yeah, I think so, because the power speed's there. Like, he's got this frame that you really want to see him fill out. I really hope we see Alex Ramirez take off, because it does feel like, man, we've been waiting on this guy forever, and the results just haven't come. Maybe they do. I do think that the results have to be better than they were in 2023, just because of the fact it's like, okay, all the underlying metrics were there. He passed the eye test for the most part outside of that hitch that you see. But ultimately, I really think that Alex Ramirez is somebody to buy the dip on, because it was like, this guy was all the hype. This has kind of like been my MO with dynasty prospects. It's like, all right, know when to sell the hype and know when to buy the dip. And this feels exactly the case. And I was preaching to sell Alex Ramirez when people were having him top 50, like he had vaulted up out of nowhere. But now, like, I'm buying. I really am. I think I'm buying, just believing that there is more here. The tools are all there. And I believe that there's something more with Alex Ramirez. So I will say I do think he's a buy at this point, despite this hitch that you see in the swing. He still made contact at really good clips. He still explodes through the ball and hits the ball hard. I'll bet on that all day. So let's get to the dreaded talk about Kevin Parada. Parada was all the hype coming out of college. He's one that, like, I can't grasp, because the gap between who he was in college and who he is now is so bizarre. I don't think he can be a catcher long term. He was getting eaten alive in the AFL. People were jumping all over him and stealing. And honestly, like, I do have some footage of him somewhere, actually, maybe in my file. Let me look. I didn't post any footage of him because it was not good. It was such a bizarre thing. And I'm sure Beck can confirm this, where it was like, what's going on here? Like, why is there not more? I actually have a home run of him. Okay, let's show this. So he had a home run. I think it was off Mitch Brott, if I'm not mistaken. Kevin Parada home run. Let's play this thing. So Parada, pretty interesting profile. I have no clue what to make of him. He smoked that ball. Hopefully there's not a lot of volume coming through. I don't see the volume control on playback screen, but anyway, look at this swing. There's this interesting hitch here. He's a little smaller than you might think. His timing mechanism has to be perfect, because he's like kind of holding that leg kick, and he kind of pops the bat forward a bit. This may have been a foul ball. I don't know why I put home run. He did hit a home run this at bat, if I'm not mistaken. He absolutely smoked this ball. I guess it was foul, because I'm watching the video back now. It's like he didn't obviously run it out, but he hit it really hard. I don't know. I'm still like kind of to be determined on what Kevin Parada can be, but I'm actually not sure if it's a catcher. He was getting ran all over. He didn't really make the best contact last year, and that showed, because he made 65% contact overall in 2023, which is 30 grade contact skills, and he was hyper aggressive too. 53% swing rate is not good at all. So that's concerning. He struck out at a high clip. He didn't walk at a great clip either. He had a 248 average, a 324 OBP, and a 428 slug last year. It left so much to be desired that I'm not sure where I'm at on Parada. I certainly dropped him even further after seeing him in the AFL, because I don't think he can be a catcher. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the bat to perform, and he hasn't made enough contact to perform ultimately. And I think there was a game actually where he allowed like 8 stolen bases. I'm like, this is not good at all. I think we need to see a lot more out of Kevin Parada to actually be semi-excited about him. And he's one I'm not sure I'm buying the dip, where I talk to scouts and talk to others in the industry, and I'm pretty out on him. So take it for what you will. Kevin Parada, not a good investment in my opinion. I missed a question from G-Rex 12. I want to go back to, what's the projected ETA for Colin Houck? 2027 or sooner. Let's see. He'll play a full season this year. I think he begins the year in A-ball. I think we could see him at some point in 2026, maybe late 2025. I don't know. We'll have to see how the progression is with him. So we'll have to watch that pretty closely. Just what he looks like. How's the development going? Those two-sport guys, like, he was such a good football player too. Sometimes they take a little bit longer to develop. So I feel good about saying like 2026, but I think this year will be really telling for him for sure. There's a lot of talent in this system. I do want to talk about Dominic Hamill, who I think is just massively underrated, to the point where in an FYPD this year, I got Dominic Hamill in really like the 11th round of a 30-team FYPD. He was still sitting out there. I'm like, what is going on? And why don't people like Dominic Hamill? And that's the question I'm still trying to discover, because I like Dominic Hamill a lot, actually. He has really, really good stuff. And it took me to like the end of the year where I was like, oh man, like this guy's been really good. He threw 124 innings in AA. He had a 3.85 ERA with 160 Ks. He was better as the year went on too. I mean, among pitchers who threw 100 innings in 2023, only 5 had a strikeout rate north of 30%, a walk rate south of 10%. He was one of them. He was the only one to spend the entire year at AA or higher. The fastball range kind of varies. It can be 93 to 97, depending on the start. But we're looking at 20 inches of IVB, which is elite. I mean, that's very high-end IVB numbers. Misses a lot of bats at the top of the zone. It's got really good life to it. And it's one that I'm like, why are people not digging in more? Why are they not getting in on this guy? He mixes a slider and mixes a cutter. Slider sits mid-80s. Cutter gets up to the upper 80s. Curveball, you see 12-6 shape here. Good downward action. Final 9 starts and 48 innings for Dominic Hamill last year. A 1.88 ERA, a 1.89 batting average against a 32.5% K rate. I think he's going to pitch in the Big Apple this year. I think he's going to pitch with a Mets jersey on this year and really be successful. He is really good, and I'm not sure why more people aren't catching on. But Dominic Hamill, a really, really good investment. I would get on him sooner than later because this is a starting pitcher. This is a really, really good one at that. Next guy is another starting pitcher that we will talk about, and that is Mike Vasil, who started out the year and looked, man, like this guy is breaking out in a major way. And while the results weren't as good when he went to AAA, I still really like what he brings to the table. There is really good stuff with Mike Vasil. And here's what the best thing I like about him. He can go deep into starts. He's consistently going 6 innings. He's going 8 innings in a start. Like, okay, this guy is somebody that I think that still has something to be excited about. We'll pull up a little bit of his film here where it's like, okay, we need to be in on Mike Vasil just a little more. Mentioned the kind of disparity between AA and AAA. First 7 starts, he had a 2.19 ERA in 37 innings with 46 Ks. But over the final 19 starts, 5.69 ERA with 92 Ks across 87 innings. 16 of those came in AAA. It is a very fastball-heavy arm. So that's really the big thing. He throws the fastball a lot. Those four-seam cutter mix. Sometimes pulls back to a slider. But between the four-seam and cutter, he threw it near 80% of the time. The slider sits in the mid-80s. The cutter gets into the 90s some. The changeup actually is really good. I wish he would throw it more. Throwing it about 10% of the time. I think there's one in this video clip where it's just diving away from that lefty. Looks like a really good pitch. He can drop a curveball in on occasion too. But I still think that there's an opportunity to buy Mike Vasil. He's got starter stuff. He throws enough strikes. He limits his walks to where I think he's somebody that can still be a good investment and maybe even pitch we see him in New York this year. So like you mentioned, Mike B mentions in the chat, Vasil, Hamill, and Scott are all non-roster invitees. So hopefully we get a good look at them. Yeah, and hopefully I'll get to see them live. I'm looking forward to that because I actually haven't seen any of those arms live, which kind of sucks. But that's kind of just been the progression of what I've seen. But I'll be down there to be able to see those guys potentially the beginning of March. So Vasil and Hamill are really good buys according to Beck, and I put the Clegg stamp of approval on that too. So I think that he is one to really get in on. My next ranked guy is Marco Vargas. He is a very interesting prospect if you've kind of followed along on Twitter of his progression, because he went from like a nobody to a top 50 prospect for some out of nowhere. He was with the Marlins and then was like, this guy is something. He's like, okay, let's pull the brakes back just a bit on this because these guys don't pop up and just automatically become top 50 guys. And then I do think that eventually people kind of pulled back a little bit on him. And yeah, I'll pull up a swing here that my LB Central had a couple swings that he posted. And there's a lot on the internet that you can find, but there is a little bit less just from the standpoint of we don't have a ton of footage on him just because of he hasn't played a lot. Let me start that swing over. You can see the open face swing. It's a pretty good swing. There's not a lot going on here. It's kind of a choppier video, but he just kind of leaned back, try to get to his power. 6 foot 170. I think he was a steal for the Mets. I'll tell you that. I mean, they moved David Robertson, got Vargas and Ronald Hernandez, who I like. And I think Marco Vargas can be a really good prospect. The debate was like, there were some mixed bag reviews of like, where were his contact rates? And there were people saying they were in the 90s. Some people were saying mid 80s, but the zone contact rate was in the mid 80s at the complex. And that number did drop to 77% in a smaller sample at single A St. Lucie. He chased about 28%, which is good. It's about average, but the overall contact rate was 72.5%. This is going to be important for him. The power has not quite developed yet, but he's young. He had a 9th percentile EV below 100 miles an hour for 2 straight seasons, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because he is a younger prospect. He's smaller. He's still developing. So I do think that he's an interesting investment, but it all depends on who you're talking to and who rosters him, because some people are like, oh, he's a superstar. I'm a little bit more reserved there, where I think that Vargas could be like a 280 type hitter potentially on the higher end seasons. Maybe he could hit you 12 to 15 home runs and steal 20 bases. Maybe he grows. I'm not going to write off that he grows and becomes something a little more. And I think he could grow into power if he does. He's still 18 years old, still really young. I'll take my chances if somebody kind of has forgotten when people were talking about him as a like superstar type prospect. So I think his value's all over the board. He's one that's kind of tough to follow. This next guy's interesting. There's not a lot of footage on him. DSL guy, Jeffrey Rosa. Maybe it's Rosa. I'm not sure how to actually pronounce that. If you do know, let me know. Be glad to correct that. He had one of the best DSLs. He hit league leading 15 home runs. He's a 6'1", 190 outfielder. Smashed the ball. He had a 669 slugging percentage in the DSL, which is just wild to see. He has big power to all fields. He's a really good athlete. Played all 3 outfield spots. I obviously think we need to be weary of DSL numbers, but Jeffrey Ross is somebody interesting to watch because you hit that amount of home runs, 15 over 148 at bats, and he had 13 doubles. That's rather impressive and something that I'm at least keeping an eye on. And I think I'm pretty aggressive on him at this point, but he's one to watch closely when he comes over to stateside, at least. Probably starts the year in the complex this year. Next guy I think actually doesn't get much love, but he's pretty good, and that's Brandon Sproat. He was a Florida Gator. That can attest that Florida does a lot of stupid stuff with their pitchers. They don't develop them all that well. They don't utilize them that well. And I think that there's a lot more in the tank for Brandon Sproat than we've seen. And you look at the arsenal, the data is really good. And there's some actually cool footage of the College World Series of him, like the catcher view of him or the umpire view, where he's just like absolutely just blowing a fastball by. So let me pull this up. This was from Pitching Net, Rob Friedman. That's tough to hit. Like that's really quick. So let me find another video of him actually. It's from Pete Flaherty. This is when pretty sure he owned my South Carolina Gamecocks in the Super Regional. Actually, this was a series. I was at one of these games. I saw Hurst. I did not see this game with Sproat pitched. I saw the Waldrop game. I will say the pitch level data is really good on Brandon Sproat. Was at the college level, and he kind of just got overshadowed, I think. And so he's a good FYPD buy, in my opinion. Let's pull up the data. The fastball set 96 last year. It's an interesting pitch because it is kind of, I would say it's more of a sinker. It's 13 inches of IVB and 14 inches of horizontal. So it's something to watch and see, like, how does this pitch actually develop? Slider set 88. It's more of a traditional shape. The slider actually gets pretty good ride, so it's interesting to see. He doesn't get a lot of horizontal. It's not a big sweepy pitch, but it does grade out well. The curveball, though, really good pitch. It gets about 10 inches of sweep, and it had -10 IVB numbers. So that's a lot of vertical drop on that pitch, sitting around 80. The changeup, though, averaged 17 inches of horizontal fade. And I think that there's a pitch in here that you can see. Oh, yes, that one. Just drop down the dirt. Just absolutely silly swing there from Dylan Brewer. I love that changeup. I'm way in on Brendan Sproat actually as an arm that doesn't cost you very much at all in FYPD. I take a shot on him pretty much anywhere I can. G-Rex said I drafted Sproat in the last round of the startup dynasty. Recently picked up Romo off waivers. I mean, I have Romo a little higher. Just playing in Coors Field is going to be huge. He's going to stick behind the plate. He's got a good defensive value. So I don't think you went wrong there. But I will say if Sproat starts popping off, then maybe you should invest in him. There are a couple more names I do want to quickly talk about. We are approaching the hour mark. Thanks for sticking around. This system is pretty loaded, actually. Tyler Stewart. He is one that he's massive. He is 6'9". The question with him is, how many 6'9" guys are starting pitchers? Like outside of Randy Johnson, like very few guys are starters at that height. And he is just absolutely massive. I'll pop up some MILB TV footage of Tyler Stewart from a Twitter that I posted. And he's huge. He doesn't really look 6'9" on the mound, but a bigger guy for sure. And throws a high extension sinker in the mid-90s. Gets a ton of arm side run. Slider gets a lot of late sweeping action, which I like to see in the mid-80s. He throws a changeup, more so just against lefties, but it runs away from him. I think the question is, like, the results were really good. The results were some of the best in all the minors last year. He had a 2.20 ERA across 110 innings. He struck out 112 batters. He had a 31% CSW, so that's pretty solid there. He had a 63.5% strike rate. That is huge too. So, these guys are very, very interesting to follow. Like, can he be a starter? He was a little older. I don't know. I'm still questioning whether he's a starting pitcher or not, but still, I think that he's one to watch pretty closely. I do like Tyler Stewart. It's a little bit of a deeper cut arm. Here's where we're getting to two fun names. Joander Suarez, who we had some talk about in the Discord yesterday. Nobody talks about this guy. I don't really understand why. Joander Suarez is spectacular. I did miss his start. He got called up the day that I was supposed to see him in high, which absolutely sucked. But I do think there's some pretty good footage that we have of him from MILB TV, because I've talked a lot about him all year, where it's like, this dude needs to get more love. I don't understand why he's not. Somebody pop that up for you. His stretch down the season, down the last couple of months, was really, really good. 34, that hair, dude, that's a nasty curveball there. So he had an overall line of a 5.08 ERA high. Far from impressive, but look at the kind of stretch from throughout the season. First 13 starts, 47 innings, a 7.23 ERA, 35 walks, 368 BABIP. From July 8th forward, included 3 AA starts in the season, a 1.92 ERA across 61 innings with 79 strikeouts and 14 walks. He leads the way with a fastball that sits the mid-90s. It has decent shape on it. I like the fastball shape, especially at the top of the zone. He's not afraid to drop that curveball slider in at the top of the zone, as well as getting those pitches to chase out of the zone. They are distinct. The curve sits in the mid to upper 70s. Slider throwing a sweeper in the mid 80s with a lot of horizontal movement. And then he throws the change in the upper 80s as well. It really does give him 4 pitches in 4 different velo bands, which is huge. The biggest question is, which version of Joander Suarez do we see in 2024? that 7.23 version, ERA version with a 15.5% walk rate in the first half, or the one that had a 1.92 ERA and a 34% K rate with a 6% walk rate in the second half. I do think that's still to be determined, but I do really like Joander Suarez. We'll keep an eye on him this year. I think he's an ad in most league formats, but really, really stinking good. Wilfredo Lara is the next guy that we're going to talk about, who I really like as well. He was somebody that I was talking about pretty early on in the season, just kind of popping like data-wise. I was watching this guy and it's like, he's not on any radars at all. And yet he has some potential to really take off, in my opinion. He has stuff that I think he's getting a little more love now, because you look at the data, it's really good. I mean, the performance was fine. 264, 362, 452 slash in single A, 14 home runs, 7 stolen bases. That was across 409 plate appearances. Struck out just 21.8% of the time, but he has really good contact skills, an 83% in zone contact rate, which is good. I mean, that's good enough for me to look at a prospect like this. And okay, there's some interesting traits. See, he swung at 70% of pitches in zone. Shows me really good recognition of the strike zone. Chased just 28% of the time. His average EV, 87 miles an hour. And then he had a 9th percentile of 102. They're good. I mean, 19-year-old, like, those are solid numbers. But he doesn't really get talked about much as all. He played across the board. Like, he played pretty much every position in the field except catcher. But most of the time he was playing third and outfield. So I'm keeping a close eye on Wilfredo Lara, who I think has some really intriguing potential. And he's going to cost you like virtually nothing. Just quickly want to hit on several other guys. Julio Zayas is one. He's a catcher, DSL. He put up some pretty gaudy numbers this year. He had a 307, 368, 517 slash with 7 home runs, 22 extra base hits, and 202 plate appearances. So he'll be one to watch when he comes stateside. Jeremy Rodriguez is another one. He was traded in the Tommy Pham deal. He began the DSL season as a 16-year-old, signed with the D-backs for $1.2 million back in the 2023 signing period. Jeremy Rodriguez is the one I wrote up today that I thought could be one of those big helium prospects that flies up boards. He ended his year with a 293, 411, 467 slash, 3 home runs and 5 triples, 10 doubles last year in the DSL. Really good athlete, 19 stolen bases. I'm pretty sure that Eric Longenhagen put him in the top 100, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a very good vote of confidence there. Who I think you should invest in Jeremy Rodriguez if you can. A couple other guys just to hit on briefly. I like Boston Barrow, who was a 8th round overslot guy this summer for them. He got a $700,000 bonus where the slot value was $192,000. Kept him away from his commitment to UCLA. He's got really strong speed, a 6.7 second 60, which is huge. It was 95th percentile for his class. And he had an 88th percentile average EV for his class too, which is also really encouraging. He's got a lot of projection on this 6'2", 170 frame. So Boston Barrow is an interesting one. I've also liked AJ Ewing a lot from this draft class, where he posted really good OBP skills. He's a quick twitch athlete. Both his 10-yard splits and 60-yard dash times were 99th percentile for this draft class. I think there's some potential power in the profile too if he does fill out. But Ewing is like a high OBP, good plate discipline, speedy guy, which I really like. Jesus Baez is a fun one. In the DSL in 2022, he was very, very good. He had 7 home runs, 9 doubles, and 217 plate appearances. And the data was what popped off the charts to me, because 5'9", 17-year-old, and he had a 104 mile an hour 9th percentile, which is above MLB average. Don't know if that's legit or not. We see some kind of shaky data from the DSL. A lot of times teams put stuff out there and it's like, can I really believe this? And it's hard to believe. And I don't know. I mean, you're 5'9" and you're 17. 104 9th is really, really good. At the complex this year, the results were not good. Had a 210, 306, 333 slash, 2 home runs in 160 plate appearances. Who's he going to be? I don't know. I think that's still to be determined, but he's got a big arm at short. I really like the profile. Maybe he's one that does pop up this year. A little bit of a deeper guy, Jonah Tong, 7th rounder out of Canada in 2022. The results were mixed bag, but the dude's fastball is like an outlier pitch at 92 to 94 miles an hour with 20 inches of IVB. That's a major outlier pitch. The curveball sits in the mid-70s. It averaged 65 inches of horizontal drop in a 12-6 shape, which is spectacular. So Jonah Tong is a really, really deep target. He also throws a low 90s cutter, a mid 80s changeup to round out the arsenal. I think the jury's still kind of out on who he is. The walk rate, really high. I think the strike rate still needs to be heavily improved on, but stuff is really, really good. And to round out my 30, I have Stanley Consuegra. Never pronounced that name right. Interesting. He's like a similar build to Alex Ramirez, and he didn't have the best results, but he did hit 23 home runs in high A last year with 15 doubles and 5 triples and 394 plate appearances. His contact rates are still kind of the question, around 70% all year. He did strike out at a 30% clip. And if he hits, I think he can move up. I think he's one that could potentially move up, but there are still some major question marks too. If there's anybody I didn't discuss that you want discussed in the Met system, pop it in the chat. Thank you for following along today on your Friday at 1 o'clock. Next week, I'm looking to actually step it up, the live stream a little bit. We'll see. Hoping to have a little bit better of an interface, have a nice overlay for the chat, and everything should be up in podcast form this weekend and on YouTube if you've missed it. So tune in there if you want to continue the conversation, or you want to go back and listen to a little bit. That will be free podcast form, free on YouTube. We'll put the videos up as well. I'll answer any questions in the chat briefly if you want those answered. G-Rex, I've been loving the content lately. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. I'm very excited, hoping to continue to pump out more and more good content for you guys. Before you go, a quick question. The college season starts today. Who's your favorite team? It's South Carolina Gamecocks, local here. Just grew up following them. Gamecock fan for all sports. And then obviously grew up with them winning the College World Series. They went 2 or 3 years to the finals between 2010 and 2012. So that was a lot of fun. And they even went 0-4 when I was a little younger, going to games too. So the Gamecocks are my team. They've got a really good team this year. It all kind of depend on the pitching. They lost all 3 weekend starters. Hoping Texas Tech can make it to Omaha this year. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fun college season. I'm excited to see it all start up today. I caught a little bit of Jonathan Santucci, Duke lefty starter, earlier today. And a lot of games are kind of popping off now at 2 o'clock. So we'll be watching the rest of the day and can't wait for that. So we can chat some college ball in the Discord if you guys want. I'll probably pop some footage up on Twitter of some guys too that I'm watching. Evan Wood, would you drop Justin Jarvis for Raza? Maybe. You mentioned the proximity play. Justin Jarvis is interesting, I'll mention, because his results were so good with a tacky ball, and it seemed like that completely fell off. He was one of the biggest stuff improvers with the tacky ball, and with the splits before or after. I don't know who he is. He had a 3.33 ERA across 75 and 2/3 with 91 Ks and 26 walks in the Southern League. And then he moved to the Mets in the Mark Canha trade, made 12 AAA starts, 43 innings, 8.79 ERA, 47 strikeouts to 34 walks. His strike rate dropped 6 percentage points over that span. He does have good stuff when he's on, but it was like a 6-inch increase in IVB, which is kind of eye-popping when you're adding that much IVB to the fastball. And the results kind of fell off when they weren't using the tacky ball. I still have major question marks of who Justin Jarvis is. I have him 26th in the system. I'm kind of willing to take an upside shot on Jeffrey Rasa if you want the upside play. So I'm good with that move. Jarvis does give you proximity. He could pitch in the bigs this year. They've got a lot of potential openings. I don't think that Mets rotation stays healthy all year, but we'll see. It'll be interesting to follow. If there's no other questions, we'll wrap up. Thank you for joining and hanging out with me on a Friday afternoon. This has been another edition of the Dynasty Dugout Show, and we will see you next time. We'll see you Monday live. If you are listening to us later, we'll be live Monday. I think it will be the Washington Nationals. No, I don't think so. We've Philadelphia Phillies is who it is. We'll talk about them on Monday. Interesting farm, kind of but there are some good talent at the top. So we'll talk those. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Hope you have an awesome weekend. See you all in the Discord.
"89% of business leaders say AI is a top priority. The right choice is crucial, which is why teams at 1/3 of Fortune 500 companies use Grammarly. Grammarly is the right AI assistant for your team. With top-tier security credentials and 15 years of experience in responsible AI, Grammarly is how companies like yours increase productivity while keeping data protected and private. See why 70,000 teams trust Grammarly at grammarly.com/enterprise.
If you're running a retail business, don't let disorganized order fulfillment cause chaos. Use ShipStation instead. From running a business out of your garage to multiple warehouses, ShipStation is ideal for every phase of your growth. Save time with one login for all your stores and by automating tasks. Plus, you'll get the best shipping rates from global carriers. Calm the chaos with the shipping software that delivers. Start a free trial at shipstation.com/audio. That's shipstation.com/audio.